because apart from the ending, there wasn't really anything good about it. Like the last 50 pages were really good, but everything else was just boring. To quote a line from the book, it was supposed to be a 5-minute train trip, but there he is, over 2.5 hours later, and 500 kilometers to the north, and somehow it feels like he's got nowhere, sucked into a journey he had no intention of taking, baffled and exhausted, his body laden, and his mind like a gauze. That is really how I felt throughout most of the story, especially when the prince was involved. I didn't care for most of the characters. Everyone was very annoying, and I just wanted it to end honestly. But as soon as the grandparents got involved, things were actually starting to become really fun. That was like the last 50 pages. I gotta admit, the prince was an interesting character from a writing perspective, but his personality is just so exhaustingly annoying. Honestly, if I met him in real life, I did totally make sure to stay away from him, and not just because he's dangerous, well, that too, of course, but mostly because of his character, honestly. I felt like I lost 10 good years of my life reading his chapters, and more years are literally slipping away from me just by thinking of him. My face wrinkles as I lie here like Princess Aurora does in a bread. Okay, true dramatic. Yeah, I was honestly surprised by some deaths of characters who were almost just as annoying as the prince. Sometimes even, and because they were, I did not think they'd get the ending they got. No spoilers here because I said almost everyone was annoying. Usually those type of characters, they always survive, right? Well, not always, but most of the time. The annoying characters usually always survive, I don't know why, but usually they do, and so I was surprised that they actually died, and pretty early as well. It was like around the half of the book, and I was like, wait, they're actually dead, no way. I think I only cared about like 2 people, and those were Wataru and Nanao. Well, Nanao not really wasn't that important. I was mostly just curious what would happen to him with all his bad luck, honestly. I felt really bad for him at some point, but I didn't really care that much about him. I was just curious what was gonna happen to him, you know? You literally never knew what's gonna happen to him because everything was possible to him. Literally everything. If the author would have turned this book suddenly into a fantasy novel, I would believe it with him, with his luck, honestly. I totally believe it with this character. With every other character, it would be unbelievable and really unrealistic, but with this character, it would have totally worked, and I would not be surprised, honestly. So that POV was actually worth following, or like actually interesting and funny to read compared to the others that were just annoying, you know? I mean, he too was sometimes annoying, and also Maria, a character that worked with Nanao and never always appeared in his chapters, also was one of the characters I really disliked, so it wasn't that much worth reading, and annoying again, but compared to every other POV, that was one of the most funny, I would say, honestly. And of course, since the grandparents were introduced in the second half, mostly at the ending, then it was really fun, like really fun. Honestly, I was having so much fun with the grandparents, and the story also actually finally got thrilling. And at that point, I was like, oh yeah, thank you that I didn't drop the story and continued, because that part was generally worth it. But overall, the story in itself is rather meh. I usually love thrillers, since it's really so exciting to guess together with the characters who might do what, who's the bad guy, etc. But this was rather laid out, totally open, especially with the multiple POVs. There wasn't really much to guess because the characters who was who and who was pulling what strings. And sure, I have read thrillers before where you got the POV from the villain, and it was still interesting to see what will happen next, and you didn't know for sure what was gonna happen, even with the POV from the villain, literally. But here, for some reason, it was really laid out, and there wasn't actually to guess anything. You already knew more or less what was gonna happen. There was very much a story you could get into because there was already everything open. Like, sure, the only revelation at the end was whether or not the good guys will make it, but overall, there wasn't really that much thrill and that much excitement. I wasn't excited at all when reading it. So yeah, it does feel a bit of a waste, honestly. As said, the ending was satisfying and I'm glad I got to the part, but overall, it was rather meh. It didn't feel like a thriller at all. I wasn't excited, quite the opposite. I kept dozing off and getting tired here and there, which is like not at all what a thriller wants to achieve in the reader, right? So I don't know, the writing style is good, and I'm not sure exactly where the problem was that a thriller failed to be thrilling. So yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad book in itself, and it surely might be interesting to read through for other people. I don't know if you're into stories that are just that are supposed to be thrilling but aren't, then that might be for you. But for me, it was simply meh. Honestly, that's the best word how I can describe the series. I don't know. So yeah, 3 stars. The ending was good. I would give 4 stars for the ending, but everything else is 2 stars. So 3 stars actually seems